Welcome in, everybody. It's the day for the minor league. I'm Aggro, joined here on the desk by Taco. And this is going to be a consistent thing throughout the year, but I've got a good feeling about today in the minor league games because there's just always these insane matchups. The minor league's just stacked this year.
I think there's just so much talent competing in a lot of these different rosters, and you know that there's a lot of teams that also have players with a ton of experience, so you can expect the best of the best, I think. I
think you definitely can, especially with our first matchup, which is OutCold up against Team Queso. Team Queso, of course, the sort of team that you might recognize, led by Warchi, a lot of those Spanish players. And OutCold has a lot of names you'll recognize from dominating the Pro League over the last few years. It's PrettyPriMe, it's Emilito, it's Spudio. Well, not Emilito today, he's being subbed in for by Hayzer, but FrostiaK, Dimi. I mean, these guys have been around the block quite a bit.
And it's really interesting, too, when you compare it, because for Queso, as far as SPL experience is concerned, these guys, I think, are a little bit lacking here, and that's where I think it's up to AlphaJackal to kind of help make up the difference.
That's a great point. Don't forget that AlphaJackal actually coaching this Team Queso, so we'll see if he can give them the strategies necessary to take down a pretty formidable foe, though, as I mentioned, they will have a sub, though it didn't stop them last week, as if we take a look at the standings, they had Hayzer in the support role last week, and they were still able to find their 2-0 victory. Flashpoint also found a 2-0 victory, so maybe they can keep that ball rolling later on. But what impressed you most about OutCold in week 1? Did they look as strong as you would expect?
I don't think they looked as strong as what we could expect because, of course, they are running with the sub Hayzer. And despite that, though, they did seem to have a lot of synergy already underway. And so that, to me, says a lot about a team when they're able to jump in with the sub, somebody who isn't even, accustomed to playing competitive Smite. I think mostly having spent a lot of time on the sidelines from Hayzer's perspective. But it seems like PrettyPriMe and FrostiaK are still able to make things happen. And that's what it really comes down to for me, is whether or not FrostiaK can continue to stay consistent.
Frosty definitely had a really good week last week, made lots of plays on this Cabrakan, a pick that we've seen a lot more of than I thought we would coming into the beginning here of Season 6. But I was really excited to see Dimi back in action, Dimi back in the competitive scene, and he really didn't look like he'd missed a beat. He looked very, very comfortable even in week 1.
And I think that's largely due to the fact that Dimi has always been a player who has kept the team fight in his mind as opposed to a laning phase. I think that having a team that's so diverse in multiple roles has definitely benefited OutCold.
That is such an insane clip. The 3-man stun from Arthur. And Arthur, I mean, you always think of Excalibur's Wrath, the big energy ultimate is the big playmaker, but when you get a 3-man stun on a 20-second cooldown and can get that energy back up and start making it work, yeah, that's pretty good. I'd be surprised if Dimi got King Arthur today, but we'll have to wait and see what King Arthur is going to do, if he's going to be there at all, if AlphaJackal is going to tell Team Queso to let him through. I think that Team Queso, despite their loss last week, had a lot of good moments against a pretty good team in Flashpoint. I think that Queso has some potential there, especially when you think about how much synergy they should have. These players have been playing together for quite some time.
I think what we got to see most from Queso, though, was glimpses of their potential. And even though it wasn't necessarily a victory run for them in the first week, that's not to say that things can't change as the weeks continue to progress, because that is the one big thing that we tend to notice over time, is that the level of competition will steadily increase because teams just have to flat out get better. They have to make those adjustments to the little tweaks in the meta that other teams begin to unfold.
Julio, if my memory serves, had a pretty good set last week despite the loss up against Flashpoint. I think that Julio and Warchi are the two that I'm going to be looking at. Dracomarino as well to some degree, but those 3 in particular seem to be the headliners for Team Queso in my mind.
Julio had a lot of individual outstanding moments, but the problem that I had there was it didn't really seem as though Julio was able to transition his leads to that for the rest of the team. But one big thing I do want to see is Julio continuing to make a lot of those early game rotations that we saw, except I want to see Queso I want to see them be more proactive with those rotations. You know that Julio is going to be having a strong performance in the solo lane. I think that's why he tends to go for such aggressive picks like the Vamana and sorts, because he wants to be a lane bully, so he can have those rotations free to work with. But Queso just did not seem like they were really able to connect with those rotations a lot of times.
So if you're in AlphaJackal's shoes and you're trying to prepare Team Queso for going up against OutCold, where are some of the is there a particular pick or a particular lane you want want to focus, maybe try and bring the fight to Hayzer, as he's the only sub in the roster right now?
I think that looking to focus out Hayzer is definitely a step in the right direction for Queso, and it's just something that's to be said about competitive play. I mean, you look for the weak links in a team, and not necessarily saying that Hayzer is the weak link of OutCold, but if I had to take my chances, I mean, I'm probably looking at Hayzer before I'm starting to worry about Dimi.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's fair to say. And look, Hayzer definitely has been around the scene for a long time and played very well last week, but as not a starting member of the main roster, you don't know how well he's going to perform, though I assume that they've been scrimming a lot with him. I believe Emilito's traveling right now, so I'd assume that all the practice that OutCold's getting is with Hayzer. We'll see what practice Team Queso has had in the picks and bans as we get ready for them right away. Team Queso in that first pick slot. We've seen a lot more of Khepraken, as I mentioned during that highlight thing. We saw WorstTurttle was playing it as well as FrostiaK, so maybe we'll see a little bit of focus there in this game, but Amu's and Cobb, the first ban. Why?
Amu's and Cobb has just been really strong, I think, at Season 6, mostly because of the double hammer meta that's unfolded. Blackthorn and Runeforge, both fairly safe and beneficial items for AMC to run. And also, I think that Dual Lane is kind of starting to see a meta shift in that it's not necessarily the sole focus anymore. I think that red buff and purple buff invades are definitely still sought after by a lot of these competitive teams, but it's a little bit easier, I think, to have survivability in that laning phase on AMC, and AMC also has fairly reliable buff secure.
Fair enough. Well, we won't see him this game. We'll see if game 2 we'll see the B, but we will see some Vamana picked first overall by Team Queso. This is something that Julio played last week, but it can flex into that jungle, which is one of the reasons why it's so safe as a first pick, it feels like.
I think I'd prefer to see Julio run the Vamana, and I think that if this is a solo lane pick as their first choice, that's a rather interesting flavor switch up for Queso, because I think that just shows a big display of confidence from Julio if he's willing to first pick the god like Vamana, still leaving himself susceptible to anti-heal choices such as Serket from OutCold.
We'll have to wait and see, though. We were a lot of comfort picks already taken. I mean, Chekio played Ullr last week, something he's pretty comfortable with. Warchi's Agni is something that he's really stuck to since moving to the mid lane. And then Khepri and Raijin on the other side were picked last week as well for OutCold. Hayzer seems to really like this Khepri pick when he gets the chance, and Achilles actually locked in here by OutCold. Another flex warrior. This can go in jungle or solo or even support, but I imagine that's where Khepri's going.
If this is a solo lane option, I like the Achilles into the Vamana. I think that those are both fairly aggressive choices, so if that is going to be the matchup there for Dimi and Julio, I definitely think that those guys are just going to be duking it out for a little bit. But also, I'm starting to think that this AMC ban might have also been a result because of the fact that Queso wanted to grab the Ullr. Ullr has a little bit of a rough time, I think, trying to deal with AMC in a 1v1 boxing, and if you're looking for that early game snowball potential, it's hard to necessarily pinpoint the AMC.
I love the Kuzenbo ban as well here from OutCold because Draco played it last week, and it's so disruptive, it really makes Khepri's job very difficult. If the rest of his team is hitting a carry or a jungler or frontline or whatever, and then the Kuzenbo just watery graves the Khepri, there's no way that res gets off, and so I think that that's a very heads-up ban, despite it's not the usual, auto-attack centric composition that you'd see Kuzenbo banned out against.
I want to see a lot of this Vamana, though, looking for the knockout specifically onto the Khepri, try and prevent that Scare's Blessing from ever being used in a positive manner. If Queso are able to just force the Scare's Blessing defensively every single time where it's like Khepri trying to be on the run and getting his team out of there, I think that that's still a big win for Queso because they're still going to be able to pressure the objectives.
Wow, very late in the draft for a Bacchus, but definitely going to be a boon for Team Queso. Bacchus considered one of the strongest Guardians right now. And then an Arachne to round out the composition. We saw Arachne have some really good success on console yesterday. Why do we see it picked here? This doesn't seem like an obvious Arachne's comp.
I think all that Queso are after here is the early game. One thing that we did see in week 1 was Queso kind of flirting with the idea of these compositions based a little bit more so around the mid and late game team fighting aspects, but this draft just screams early game pressure to me from Queso.
Do you think Queso will have enough early game pressure to melt OutCold?
I like the crowd control that they have, so yeah.
All right, we'll have to wait and see. Let's throw it over to the casters for Game 1. Team Queso up against OutCold.
It is Game 1. Finch and Aggro here, and we're going to have to find someone new to host the desk after that melt-out cold line. That's awful. That's horrible.
You called me aggro there?
Did I say aggro?
Yeah, you said aggro.
Finch and Anatoly, excuse me.
I know both of our names start with A there, but quick shout out to
aggro
there.
Really good analysts, and you both came to mind.
See, Taco missed the ball there. Aggro did the hottest of 2019 setups there. Do you think that Queso is hot enough to melt OutCold Gaming? With an Agni on the team, of course they're hot enough to melt OutCold Gaming. What was Taco thinking? Not jumping on the ball there.
He did the right thing to ignore it.
No.
We can't ignore this early game, though, as it is the Arachne that was selected for WorstTurttle with the blink to get things started, so it certainly will be looking to be aggressive here, I imagine, early on.
WorstTurttle likes to play aggressive, but so does FrostiaK. Both of them having the similar god pulls between the Kabrakan and the Ao of week number 1, so it makes a little bit of sense as to this Arachne pick.
Hayzer takes a little bit of extra poke here early on. Remember, he is still subbing in for this team. OutCold likely will be playing with Emilino in that slot once he's more available. It's Hayzer in there for now, as Prime has to use Aegis in middle lane.
Makes sense. Instant blink from WorstTurtle, even at level 1, is scary enough. You don't want to take all that unnecessary damage over time from that venomous bite, especially as a Raijin. When you started off with cooldown boots, having no potions available to you, that was a great timing on the Aegis.
It absolutely was. And take a look, FrostiaK wasn't there with him. That's also probably why WorstTurtle felt comfortable going in. He's still on that right-hand side of the map. And speaking of these solo laners, a meditation earlier on for Julio, we don't see these very often, I feel like. Totally,
it makes sense because you don't want to get into execute threshold, right? Like, if you do dip under that 30%, Dimi's lights are going to light up, go for the Fatal Strike, and then that's when Julio is going to time the meditation, preventing lethal.
To try and make sure he doesn't end up getting executed. Maybe not a bad idea, but only useful perhaps in those situations as we head back over to the duo lane, where we can see the Bacchus and the Ullr trying to get some pressure.
WorstTurtle getting a lot of pressure around the jungle side. FrostiaK not able to really keep up with this Arachne.
You want to go stop him?
I don't want to stop this Arachne. No, not at all. I'm not trying to box an Arachne 1v1, and I think that the pressure that WorstTurtle applied in the mid lane is what allowed him to kind of transition over to that red buff. But it was a smart play from PrettyPriMe using that Aegis. We haven't seen this opening much lately from mid laners, but new in Season 6 is if you have a god in the mid role that has a line ability such as Raijin, hold that thought though, action in the dual lane.
And the leap in from Chekio, that's almost enough to get the kill, but Shell just barely keeps Hayzer alive. But I love this aggression from the Queso dual lane.
It's great because there's only one health potion remaining for Hayzer. He doesn't have much of a lifeline remaining to play with for the rest of this laning phase. He's going to have to go back momentarily. But touching back on what PrettyPriMe was doing, any mid-mage that has a line ability, such as Raijin, Ra, for example, you have the ability to sit in base for that extra like 15 to 16 seconds. Pick up Shoes of Focus because it's 1550 gold. Use that mobility to go through the mid wave, and because you have that extra boost of once you first leave the fountain, you're able to get to the speed buff, use your abilities to still help your jungler, and get to the wave at the same time. The only downside is not having any potions for the laning phase.
And that's why it takes someone, you know, as competent as our top-level players like Prime, we saw it yesterday in the SCL as well, who can manage that mana well, and that's what Prime has done. He had to use the Aegis early on, but whatever it takes that he can stay in the lane and prioritize keeping the HP and the mana both up so he can time his backs appropriately.
Just now hitting level 4 is FrostiaK, experience advantage, still helping out WorstTurtle after that red buff invade. Expect to see it probably happen again as they complete their own red buff. They have the timing, so they could clear this mid wave and look for a little bit of pressure on the left side jungle.
Red buff is just about to spawn. Her buff is a much further behind it. In fact, look at
there
this. You can see Warchi and WorstTurtle already in position. I imagine that they're the ones with the red buff timer, and OutCold don't even quite know when it's going to be up.
Because the problem for OutCold Gaming is they were doing their back camps, and they...
Oh, look, it's about the XP, not the buff.
No.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Who cares about the buff, honestly? But honestly, the thing is, the back camps into the mid wave, they didn't want to concede the whole entire mid wave, so they're just going to kind of leave it alone, the red buff. They don't want to fight this level 5 Agni, level 5 Arachne combination, especially when FrostiaK is still only level 4. But I think if we actually look over to the red buff, I think that they might have left one little minion behind. Or no, it actually, the buff was stripped away, it just wasn't updated there in the UI.
That's all that it was. Is FrostiaK has now ticked over to level 5, and usually this is a go button for Ratatoskr, able to very often get kills off that level 5 pressure. And remember, Team Queso has been pushed up in duo lane it would not surprise me if FrostiaK did want to rotate over there with that through the Cosmos. Maybe try and punish Chekio and Dracomarino if Hayzer and Spudio are in a position to help follow up.
That's usually the idea and the mindset when you don't have an aggressive duel lane. You get that global pressure. Speaking of, landing in mid lane.
It's actually Warchi. Either way, level 5 Ratatoskr always finds a kill. It goes over to PrettyPriMe, and OutCold Gaming are on the board first, despite having lost some pressure in duo.
Warchi must have used his dash aggressively or something there, because I didn't see it used at any given moment. He even didn't elect to use the beads when getting knocked up. He probably assumed that he was dead to rights without his escape available to him.
And that's the right call in that moment, right? Have beads for the next time it comes through. You almost accept, I feel like sometimes, that Rat's going to be a part of First Blood, or at least a kill around level 5, so maybe Warchi can just shrug it off and be more prepared for any other trouble he runs into in mid.
Imagine being in Agni and looking up to the sky with a little rat coming on you, and you're like, this is how I die.
This is exactly
the cutest death ever.
How he died in that situation. But there's still plenty of room for him to turn things around. He went with the pin boots early, so not worried about stacking just yet. He also has the Mage's Blessing to help him out in lane. So a slightly different start from what we see from Prime, who's taken a good bit of poke from those bombs already.
Still looking for a red buff invade. This would be number 3 if Queso can get it. Hayzer is around the corner. Make it 4 OutCold members. They're tired of losing their red buff. Needs one more hit. Warchi gets it, though.
Yeah, it looks like they still were not able to defend the buff, but they want to fight on the back end anyway. Up into the sky is Spudio looking for the snipe. He finds a Warchi. Dracomarino, though, gets FrostiaK to make it 1-for-1, but Hayzer, he's too low, and WorstTurttle gets in a position to clean up the bug. That's 2 for 2.
Perfectly worth it. At the end of the day, Queso gets the red buff.
What?
Only loses 1, and WorstTurttle makes it a 3-for-1 at the end of the day. Great use of the blink.
My man, with the confidence.
He's feeling himself.
To blink underneath the tier 2, and not just to blink on that, because you're definitely going to get that kill there. You might be a little bit concerned, though, that there's going to be some follow-up, but I think he recognized that no one was going to be expecting that from OutCold.
He definitely knew that PrettyPrime's Aegis was on cooldown, but it was risky because PrettyPrime's ultimate was coming off of cooldown any given second after they found the kill from Warchi in the mid lane originally, so that was a risky call, but it works out there. He didn't lose his life. He got the kill. He even stole the backcams as a result, just extending that experience lead even further.
Yeah, I don't think you pick Arachne if you're afraid.
No.
You don't pick Arachne to play cautious, so
no,
WorstTurttle taking that to the extreme, I would say, here in this game. And you know what? Those are the kind of plays you got to bring if you're going to take down a team as strong as OutCold Gaming. These are all players who could be in the SPL tomorrow. Like they're good enough to do that. Dimi, Prime, and Spudio have all played at that elite level. So if you're a team like Queso who's been together for so long, when you're going up against a team like this, you gotta swing for the fences.
That's right. PrettyPriMe being in the World's Finals, Dimi winning 2 World's Finals as well. Hayzer, coaching that Obey Alliance, has a lot of experience under his belt. So a lot of formidable names for that OutCold Gaming. And speaking of Dimi, just kind of casually farming up right now. Not much to speak about in this solo lane, but surprisingly, Julio opted for this Talaria boots, Mage's Blessing combination. Now, I like the Talaria boots simply because it gives you so much mobility when rotating, and an undervalued stat, the MP5 that you get from this item. As a Vamana, you definitely need that MP5 to spam your abilities.
It looks like the red buff was successfully stolen again, Toli. That's rough now.
Number 4
for OutCold. They have not been able to stay on top of this buff at all, and this is now 2 attempts in a row where they were actually there for the buff and still couldn't defend it. They did get that first blood, so remember that is some extra gold that's helping them out in terms of keeping relevant, but Team Queso have found a spot where OutCold don't have an answer.
And it's the experience that's going to start slipping out of OutCold Gaming's fingertips. There's a 2-level advantage between Dracomarino and Hayzer, so they could definitely use that to their advantage for that level 12 marker.
They force Prime to jump away in the middle lane. Meanwhile, Spudio has the beads forced out by Ullr. In other news, water wet, as Ullr feels like he's always forcing beads out from someone.
I wanted to talk about FrostiaK's global pressure. When they killed out Warchi in the mid lane, I was going to mention how, because of the aggressive dual lane, if you concede that dual lane, you can allow your global pressure jungler to gank that lane, but instead that global pressure was applied in the mid lane.
Blink underneath the tower, immediately up into the air is Spudio. that will be the ultimate on cooldown, but he gets a good return damage. That's all the shots hitting on the WorstTurttle, and he can't return. And now here's FrostiaK, who's finding Chekio. And remember, he's in the axe stance. He does have the leap available to him, but the dash closes the distance beads in case the axe came, and an easy kill for FrostiaK.
Why does no one like to use their beats against the Ratatoskr ultimate? Dracomarino now forced to jump away from PrettyPrime's Taiko drums, and just like that, OutCold Gaming punishing the aggressive dual lane. Chekio trying to follow up off of WorstTurtle's primary engage, forcing the ultimate out of Spudio was a good look, but he missed the axe.
And there's the medic doing exactly what you said it was going to do and saving Julio's life over in the solo lane. But that's a good time for them to get kills over in duo, right? Is they take down Chekio, and the red buff is going to be spawning soon, so this might give them a chance to be able to be in position to secure it. But it'll be that much harder if Hayzer ends up falling here to WorstTurtle. The knockup's there, and they drop the chug. He has Scarab's Blessing on himself, but WorstTurtle wants to wait out that duration on the web.
He's going to try to do
gets
it, but
juked.
he missed,
Hayzer.
unfortunately. And now Dimi there with the cleanup. WorstTurtle likes to play aggressive, but even if he got the kill there, he was still going to die for sure. Hayzer would have gladly traded out his life, but the fact that he lives now means that he has more farming opportunities, sharing the red buff and now the back camps.
Man, that's unfortunate. I don't often call for taunts, but Khepri has such a good dancing mode. You let that fly when you dodge the ultimate like that, and kind of show him the moves. But excellent from one-time coach Hayzer, showing that he's got some juke boots, able to get away from WorstTurtle.
If there's ever like a top 3 list of gods that I wouldn't mind taunting me, it would definitely be Khepri in that top 3.
Yeah, those are some nice moves that that Khepri's able to drop as the Totem of Ku goes
You know
over to
who
the
else?
OutCold side. I would like to hear it. Yeah.
Artio in bear form.
Okay, that's good. Like, do you want to see her like sit down wave?
Yeah,
or,
the sit down in the wave.
Yeah.
That's like the taunt. That's not really a taunt directly.
Yeah, it almost feels nice. Like maybe I could like this person, you know, despite the fact that they're taunting me in this game. Maybe.
What's your top 3?
Of gods I wouldn't mind taunting?
Yes.
I don't know. I get really tilted by that kind of stuff, so I don't think I want anyone to taunt me. It's very easy to bait me into bad engagements with taunting.
You wouldn't like to see Vamana taunt?
No. I have strong feelings about Vamana. So
What's wrong with Vamana?
he's good.
Okay. So what's wrong? Okay, so if Vamana's good,
Yeah.
what's wrong with a Vamana taunt?
Exactly. You don't deserve to taunt me. Vamana's good right now. You're not good at the game, you scrub.
Wow, you calling Julio not good for playing Vamana right now?
Well, Julio's pretty good.
Wow, somebody's gonna tweet
Julio
some
can
mean
taunt.
things at you now.
He's allowed to. He's good at the game. Let's see what the plan is for Dracomarino as they move up around these mid camps. Thought maybe they might look for FrostiaK, but he's going to be able to safely rat his way over to his friends. He went with Transcendence second and has that stacking up and good to go. Some cooldown, a ton of power. Wouldn't be surprised if we see some pen coming next, though.
Yeah, FrostiaK going for the Transcendence, as is Chekio on the flip side on the Ullr. No surprise there. A little surprising to see it on the Ratatoskr, though. A lot of physical power means that he just wants the ability damage more than anything else, probably on these squishy targets. And it's working out because, man, Warchi is not beating, Chekio is not beating the ultimate, so it's making FrostiaK's job a lot easier than it should be.
FrostiaK looked to maybe punish Julio for this proxy farm, but it's harder than it looks to try and lock down a Vamana. He's able to walk right on out of there is Julio.
Going for an old school build such as Mystical Mail, when you are a jungler without penetration, there's no real business for you to be in that solo lane ever.
No, that's a good point. FrostiaK's kill potential on Julio is very low, as this Pyromancer is going to drop very early on. This is something Arachne can kind of just do, is burn down those objectives. In terms of single target DPS, she's pretty high up there.
And this is where Totem of Q becomes less meaningful as the game progresses. At the 12.5 minute mark, if you don't know where your opponent solo laner is, assume that they're probably doing Pyromancer or probably doing something a little bit more valuable than just getting 125 gold for your whole team. And that's surprising that Dimi is the one that let that slip through, because honestly, his mindset for the game, he's always thinking very analytically, and he probably was expecting that to happen, but I think that he was already committed at that point.
You're right, though. The later the game gets, it's harder for the Totem of Ku to be the most valuable thing you could be doing with your time at any moment. And it should be going away here in about a minute and a half anyway, as Chekio comes over to grab these oracles on the left-hand side. There's still a bit of a grouping in middle lane, though. Stun lands on a Hayzer, but they won't find anything more
left side.
than that.
There goes the blink from WorstTurtle. Gonna force out the ultimate from Spudio, and the ultimate even from FrostiaK.
He's going to come over to make sure that Spudio is able to get out of here okay, but now he might have gone too far forward. Unable to find the stun is WorstTurtle, so he's okay for now. But Hayzer also moving forward. We'll find the root, but there's no one to follow up anything further here either. But there's 5 members from OutCold on this side of the map. They got to find something for this rotation.
They definitely should. Hayzer's around the corner with FrostiaK. They're still thinking about the left-hand side.
Julio
Even
just showed himself.
Dimi is still around the corner as well. Gold Fury has to be the contested objective with the Pyromancer already completed.
And there's no teleport for Julio, remember? He's got Meditation and Blink. They know for sure he can't get here in time, so Gold Fury has now been pulled. It's going to be on the 4 members of Queso that are here to try and defend. They're going to settle for trying to poke down Hayzer instead while DPS continues on the Gold Fury. Tycho Drums controls too many, and that should be enough for Queso, actually, to grab the Gold Fury and not OutCold. Impressive that they were able to do it and get good poke. They want to chase down Hayzer now.
Oh, they're going to get somebody. Hayzer's going to fall there. Ultimate was available, just mistimed. A great positioning from the mid player, Warchi. Agni wrapping around the top left mid Harpy side where there wasn't just any vision at all. Everyone was just a little bit too preoccupied around that red buff where they saw Dracomarino and they also saw Chekio. Chekio kind of awkwardly jumps up and down, and that really confused OutCold Gaming.
Spudio might be in a little bit of trouble now as WorstTurttle, Chekio, and Julio are all here to try and complete this dive. There's 4 members that are going to be able to find him. Aegis is good to buy himself a little bit of time, but there's nothing to do with that time. He ends up falling, and now it's up to Prime to defend the tower.
And because WorstTurttle forced that ultimate out of Spudio earlier on, he couldn't buy any more time to survive to allow the rotations from either Hayzer or PrettyPriMe to save his life. Dimi casually just going to get the solo tier 1 tower as a result. And so far, Queso's been doing a good job on the objectives, confirming the Pyromancer, stealing away the Gold Fury.
Yeah.
They just need to find some of these towers now after losing their tier 1 in the solo lane.
Team Queso totally are giving OutCold all they can handle here so far, at least throughout this early game. They're about 2,000 gold in front, but the real shocker, 5,600 experience, is absolutely nothing to scoff at this point in the game. You can see that really materializing between Draco and Hayzer.
Yes, the mid player and also the support is where it's going to really matter. Sitting at level 10, Hayzer needs to wait a little bit before he gets that second relic, and Dracomarino going to abuse that factor by picking up the Blink second relic. A Blink Bacchus that is as aggressive as it comes.
FrostiaK can't find the stun, so Warchi is able to fall back out. But you're right, Blink Bacchus
is so aggressive.
Going to be looking to cause some absolute problems, isn't he? With some if he can find the aggression here for Team Queso. And it wasn't even really aggression that won them that last fight, right? He was really OutCold, not keeping track of where everyone from Queso was. And they had 1 less member to keep track of, right? Julio wasn't even there.
If everyone from OutCold Gaming just straight up DPS the Gold Fury, they were fine. PrettyPriMe used his abilities to poke out Dracomarino to try to zone him away, which makes sense. Bacchus does a lot of burst damage with the Intoxicate for Gold Fury steal, but they didn't factor in that Warchi was around the corner.
That's enough to get the Aegis, or Aegis, out from Chekio as red buff invade comes through yet again. Though Prime is there to try and defend this time, it will be all for naught as it's picked up yet again by Queso.
Wow.
The red buff invades, the Gold Fury steal, the Pyromancer, they've done a great job on objectives as Dimi's in trouble.
He's in a little bit of trouble, going to combat dodge away, stunned out, but there goes in the back line, FrostiaK landing in.
He is landing in, but Dimi ends up finding Dracomarino without any trouble whatsoever. They're able to get away from Hayzer as well, but it's WorstTurttle who tries to come in the backside, I suppose. He wanted Prime, but that's going to force the ultimate out from him. Thunder Crash gets Prime away, and WorstTurtle has to retreat too.
So far, a 1-0 OutCold Gaming on top, but with FrostiaK getting poked out as is PrettyPriMe, they can't really use that 5-on-4 advantage to get any tier 1 tower in the mid lane, so they're just going to kind of reset, casually wait around, maybe contest these oracles as Hayzer's wraps around the backside.
That's going to force Chekio away. Remember, no Aegis available. That was forced down from a little bit earlier on, but without Spudio moving forward, that was more for zoning than anything else, and they are at least able to fall back and get some of those oracles. But another fight in middle lane that at least finally goes OutCold's way. They are able to at least get Dracomarino.
There was a little bit of an overcommitment onto Dimi, and I think that Dracomarino miscalculated the amount of damage that they had to find the kill. Pretty tanky is Dimi with so much health. They're having that Blackthorn's Hammer, 450 health from that item, about 150 health from the Genji's Guard, and then you got a little bit of physical defense coming from the Gladiator Shield. His only issue now, Dimi, is that he needs more, I think, magical defense, because Warchi's damage is going to start getting really ridiculous once he finishes that Obsidian Shard.
He's the furthest 1-4 on his team aside from Julio, but definitely the furthest ahead of his direct opposition. So that is something that you're going to have to make sure you're worried about is Dimi. The good news is, if he is going to go health focus, there's not a ton by way to punish that. No Kins, no Soul Reaver. I suppose those could be on the horizon later on. For now, Dimi should be A-okay.
I think he'll just probably pick up the Pestilence, try to do a double dip on magical defense and the anti-healing for Julio whenever that ultimate comes out. Also will prevent the Venomous Bite from being super effective.
Super effective.
Yeah.
You know what kind of stuff Bug is super effective against, like in Pokemon?
I should know this, actually. Hold on. Psychic?
I think so, actually, yeah.
Is that it?
I think
there has to be more.
They're definitely a super effective against something else. I don't even know. Maybe Dark or something weird like that? Yeah, Bug is one of those ones that, like, sneaky
Is it
good.
Rock? No.
I don't think Rock.
Thinking of, like, Grass
Chat's
type.
definitely mad at us right now for not knowing our type effectiveness charts. All right. Well. Either way, Arachne is super effective when there's not an anti-heal around.
That's true.
And Dimi might want to try and slow that down, but want to be in position for the spawn here of this next Fury. It will be the Oni Fury indeed. They'll spawn the next wave, but FrostiaK wants to stop them. He went right up into the air and found the knockup. They make Chekio the target, but FrostiaK gets punished for it. A good Scarab's Blessing from Hayzer keeps him alive, but that means Queso can go right back to the Gold Fury.
Warchi looking for a little bit of poke. FrostiaK is still going to think about sticking around. Gold Fury reset. It is the Oni Fury, actually.
Yep.
Julio trying to juke around some of the shots. A lot of damage to the back line.
Warchi nearly chunks PrettyPriMe, still standing, and able to get a Thunder Crash off, but he goes up to the ultimate and gets nothing out of it. WorstTurttle dunks right down with the Arachne. So far, that thing has paid dividends, but Julio might need some assistance.
He's not done yet. He's going to dive that tier 2 tower while everyone else is preoccupied with Dimi getting 1 kill onto Warchi before he goes down. A valiant sacrifice.
Yeah, that's not a bad trade at all. Warchi is a nightmare right now for OutCold Gaming. You definitely want that Agni damage out of this equation as the Oni Fury's under siege yet again. It's going to be Spudio to contest with the ultimate, and that's enough. He steals it away. They trade 1 for 1, at least in terms of Furies. Julio takes some damage, but it's Hayzer who gets locked down. Still has the dash to reposition, and Queso find nothing more.
Chekio wants this. Chekio wants this so badly. Dracomarino going to jump in the back line. The blink even coming from Dracomarino, but now FrostiaK is in position.
He is going to come from the backside. WorstTurttle finds one. Julio a second, and all of a sudden OutCold Gaming now might have gotten baited into a bad situation. A good dash from FrostiaK lets him reposition. Remember, the tier 1 is still up, fellas, so we got to get out of there. But they at least find some kills on the back end. That's 3. I think Prime died as well, so that's really 4 that they made fall on OutCold.
And FrostiaK should have died if not for Hayzer's ultimate. So that would have been an unofficial deicide, but at the end of the day, OutCold Gaming steals away the objective, which, you know, there is justice in the world. They lost that first Gold Fury, but now they're the ones that picked up the Oni Fury, so there's going to be some minions that Queso is going to need to keep track of. They can't let that right side lane go unattended with those super minions starting to go down.
And they really can be nice. What those minions do when they're buffed up is that they really kind of create this extra threat that you have to think about. They can take a tower or 2 on their own if you leave them to push.
I think that left side lane might have some Oni Fury waves that needs to be attended to, but with this much action on the right side of the map, I don't really see how they can do it. So far, Chekio is making that rotation happen. And if OutCold Gaming notices where Chekio is, that could be at least a Pyromancer or maybe a 5-on-4 fight on the right side.
It definitely could be an opportunity for them to make a play. We might have an opportunity, but it looks like Julio and Dimi are trying to start some action, so we'll follow along with them instead for now. This looks like maybe nothing more will come from it. If we have a chance, can we go back and take a look at that Gold Fury steal? I want to see if Spudio lands those shots on him, if that's what set it up for them to take that away.
See if it was the first shot or the second shot, maybe even the third shot. But like at this point, Julio's in great position to wait for Spudio to land on down and the first shot. There was just no timing. Okay, so that makes sense. Normally, you want to reset the Gold Fury, but like at that point, it was so low that there was just no way that he doesn't steal it unless they instantly reset. That was a beautiful play.
It was well timed. This might be a problem for Chekio, though. Great beads this time, so he does not get knocked up, and they've got the turnaround. He ends up going right back in towards the tower and falling to WorstTurttle. But now Chekio's got to do a little bit of juking of his own. Gets hit by the last shot, but WorstTurtle's right there waiting for him. And oh no, right into the Bacchus. You don't want that breath on you, and that's another kill. Dracomarino takes down Spudio.
From the stove straight to the oven, avoiding one for both, honestly, Spudio and FrostiaK. FrostiaK was trying to get away, and he dashes straight into the tier 1 tower. There was no minions for him to tank that one up, so a 2 for nothing is going to allow Queso to make a play in the mid lane.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that when you beads the rat ult before it hits, you're able to make some good stuff happen, totally. And it ends up working very much in favor of Chekio there as they find the double turnaround with WorstTurtle's help. Tier 1 tower goes down, and WorstTurtle will continue his crusade to strip away the red buff, and Prime watches it fall yet again.
I think if anything OutCold Gaming can learn from this game, it's you can't give up the red buff that many times in the game because
it's been a lot.
There was like, what, 4 consecutive red buff invades from like the first minute in the game to like minute 8 or 9, something like that. And they tried to contest invades number 3 and 4, but they started to lose members during that process just simply because they were more passive early game, which is fine if you can make plays in the late game. But now, sitting behind about 6,000 gold, OutCold Gaming cannot allow this lead to stretch any further. If they lose the Fire Giant, they're going to probably lose the game finish.
They definitely could at this point. I'm taking a look at these player damage charts, and we actually just got to see it on display. Chekio, really, for all the credit we've given to Warchi, he's the one that's bringing in a ton of damage on the side of Team Queso. He's actually the highest in the game right now, so it is certainly a two-pronged attack from these cheese boys on the blue team right now. They got to make sure they deal with both Warchi and this Ullr somehow.
They're going to try to make a play on the right side of the map. Dimi going to get knocked out from Dracomarino, stunned, a little bit out of range. Missing it was Chekio. Left side, Hayzer going to contain WorstTurttle to prevent the dive from being more fruitful.
Man, everyone's here on this right side of the map, all 10 players, so this is where the action's going to happen. They should be able to grab this tier 1 without any trouble. FrostiaK has now used the ultimate, so this has to be a commitment from OutCold. They can't afford to give up this ultimate. Chekio jumps perfectly to avoid the knockup, but still has to use the Aegis anyway. The snipes from Spudio are good. That puts Chekio low, and Hayzer finds the first kill, but Julio in the big baby form wants more.
He's a little low, but that duration is just a little bit too long. Hayzer still has ultimate, so the aggression from OutCold Gaming is not going to stop here.
WorstTurtle's able to blink to the back line. Hayzer, though, is great with the Scarab's Blessing. Dracomarino finds FrostiaK, but up onto the web. He wants Prime. He'll have to settle for Spudio instead. Aegis duration gives him a moment to breathe, but not a moment to get away from the knockup. Warchi cleans that kill up. Now Prime in some trouble. Dash and aggressive from Warchi. A double kill. 3 go down, and Queso run the fight.
Dimi trying to answer back in kind, at least trying to find Warchi. Needs one more hit. Stunned in the middle of the dash. Hayzer's going to go down. Dimi trying to survive. It's going to be a deicide here in a second.
And this Arachne is a nightmare for OutCold. They don't have a way to stop her. What patience from WorstTurttle to loop back around and blink in from that blue buff on Clove, and that's what really split the fight back up from OutCold. They should be able to come and get this Fire Giant without any trouble. It'll be the enhanced version. We're past the 25-minute mark, but what a team fight, totally.
That was a great team fight to start off for OutCold Gaming because they kill out Chekio. They knew his beats were still on cooldown from that engagement between the tier 1 and the tier 2 tower on the left-hand side.
WorstTurttle.
Oh,
my man. My man.
A bug and fire. Fire is super effective against bugs, Finch.
That is true. WorstTurtle. Okay, he's made it out. Just back.
Oh
yep,
my God.
I like it.
Anyway, going back to that fight, Chekio was the primary target because he didn't have beats, right? And then Hayzer saves the life of PrettyPriMe.
A really good ult,
couldn't save the ult or save the life of FrostiaK as well. So like kind of pick your poison, right? And as a result, all the AoE damage from Warchi started to really shine in this late game equation. He has plenty of cooldown reduction between the Chronos Pendant and also the Spear of Desolation. When that Agni goes unchecked, that's how Queso is going to start winning these team fights.
That is a problem for him. You're right. Warchi was able to get off good damage. WorstTurttle was also unchecked. I like the idea of this Midgardian mail. Maybe that's something to try and make life a little bit harder for this Arachne, but that's only if the Arachne is going in on Dimi in particular and not on like the carries like he's done a good job of so far as the Primal Fury will now fall. An unfortunate order, I suppose, for Team Queso. If they had done that before the Fire Giant, it would have been slightly less harrowing, but it's still good to have in case another one ends up coming up.
I like the Midgardian mail, but I'm still surprised that there's no Pestilence to deal with the healing from Julio and the healing from WorstTurtle. Maybe even go Runic Shield, trying to limit some of the magical power coming out of Warchi.
Wow.
They're all valuable items in their own right, but I think that Dimi wants to just try to get in front of the bug instead.
They're going to go grab the minion wave from mid-wave and push that up. There is a sentry and a couple wards in the jungle, so OutCold will certainly know where Team Queso are. Meanwhile, Julio is pushing up from the right side all by himself. Remember, he has no teleport this game, so if he's going to join them, it'll be the old-fashioned way from this Vamana. But they're still slow playing it. They're going to come all the way over towards him instead and push solo.
And I like the fact that he doesn't go teleport based off of his build. Only works because of his build. Traveler shoes, or sorry, Talaria boots, a lot of mobility when you're not in combat. I think 25% to be exact. Then you have an extra 10% coming from this hastened katana as well. So if he's ever like split pushing, it's not going to take him long to regroup with the rest of his teammates.
OutCold need to be here though for this, and they will not be. That is a Phoenix with little to no contestation. I would say none.
Prime is a great defender on playing on the Raijin, so that is a missed opportunity to keep the game going for a little bit longer. And now, Queso with a commanding 15,000 gold, with the Phoenix down to the right side of the map control going all the way towards Queso.
It is, and now it looks like OutCold are at least considering being around for this tier 2, but with the way everyone else is backing up, this won't be a legitimate defense. The tier 2 tower will certainly go down, and Queso actually still have time if they do want to make another push with this FG, but I think instead they want to back and spend some of this gold. They have a lot of it that's in their pockets that's not actually adding to their lead, and then they can come back and come to OutCold with a significant advantage.
So, judging based off of the week 1 results between these two teams, you wouldn't think that Queso would be in this kind of position the way they are now. Because Queso, week number 1, they lost to Flashpoint, 0-2. Week number 1 for OutCold Gaming, they beat Simplicity. So now, kind of flipping the switch for both of these teams as Queso is in the lead and pretty much in dominating fashion for game number 1.
I agree. This is a bit of a surprise at how this match would go. I was watching along with these teams who had items they bought on their back, and I think Gauntlet of Thebes was just picked up for Dracomarino. A little bit surprising. You pick it up this late in the game. Titan's Bane, not a surprise for Chekio at all. That is going to be a real problem for OutCold to deal with some of that extra pin that he'll have. But I mean, some of those Thebes stacks are coming in, and he'll be able to get them in time, perhaps.
The thing is, Queso is in the driver's seat. They choose when they want to end the game.
Right.
So they can wait for those stacks to be completed before they go for the final push. Whereas if it was hypothetically Hayzer getting that Gauntlet of Thebes stacks, he's not in control of just farming it out because he's going to have to play defense for as long as possible. So I don't mind the Gauntlet of Thebes this late, only because of how much of a commanding lead Queso has.
He's already got 20 stacks, so you're right, Toli. If they're okay with sort of making sure that Draco's there, just like that, for those waves, it might not be too long before they have him. 26 now already with that middle wave, so this could work.
Only 24 stacks remaining, 6 per wave. You have 4 waves, 30 seconds per wave. That's 2 more minutes remaining before Dracomarino can complete all those stacks.
And that's not counting these jungle camps able to get. He just got mid-harvest to help out too. So this is going to work for Draco. I like it because it's like when you're in this moment, right, when you're not going to siege again, when they know they're waiting on this next fire giant, there's time, right, for this to do it. So that's them making the most value of this time they have for the next FG.
And even if Dracomarino doesn't finish Gauntlet of Thebes stacks, but they still start Fire Giant anyway, there's no world where OutCold Gaming even try to contest it, where they still have to defend the right side wave because they are just so far behind item-wise now, 17,000 gold behind.
That's a ton. It really is going to be difficult for them as Ratatoskr is there for Warchi along with the Soul Reaver. This Agni is going to swing like a championship boxer. You do not want to step in to those punches he's going to be throwing out at all. OutCold, though, or at least signaling that they want to be around for this next Fire Giant. I'm a bit surprised, but now they're falling back a little bit.
It's very fortunate that the only Phoenix that they lost was the right side of the lane, which is right by the Fire Giant. So they have the luxury of maybe contesting the Fire Giant for a steal, but they're not going to probably commit to a full-on 5-on-5 fight unless they see a lot of AoE damage from the Fire Giant onto Queso.
WorstTurtle's been rooted a little far forward. Prime gets some good poke as the Fire Giant is pulled up. Just remember, WorstTurtle is down to about 60% HP and is somewhat vulnerable.
He's going to use the Venomous Bite on the blue buff and then reset it, go back into the team fight. So he'll be about 75 to 80% health, make it closer to 90 actually from that one ability.
Draco was able to get a few more minions from the right side too. 46 stacks now on that Gauntlet of Thebes and feeling mighty comfortable. But OutCold Gaming absolutely want to be around for this fight. They don't want to let this Fire Giant go down for free. And they're, like you said, they're able to keep this right side Phoenix up.
There's still a 1 fire minion wave that they're going to have to siege. Make that actually 2, I think, at the same time that that right side Phoenix has respawned. So now OutCold Gaming is in a position where, all right, what do we do? Do we defend? Do we try to stop the Fire Giant? But actually making a rotation on the left side of the map. WorstTurttle going to grab an Oni Fury.
This is smart.
And this is a beautiful Fury to take.
Yeah, this is great for this exact situation where right now they have their stronger minions on the wrong wave. This gives them 2 extra waves on the other sides of the map now to kind of force OutCold to go deal with them. These minions can definitely threaten the Phoenix with that buff from the Oni Fury.
That's right. So I think Queso just going to wait out about 60 to 90 seconds. Wait to see how far this left side and mid waves are going to push up or just straight up do the Fire Giant now.
Dimi's the furthest forward. He's already taken a good bit of poke. He's down to 50% HP. He's been stunned. The bombs are there from Warchi, and that forced out the ultimate defensively.
Oh, no.
And now they want Hayzer. I think his dash just got blocked. He's body blocked and nowhere to go. Has to Scarab's blessing himself. And the knockup perfectly timed from Draco. WorstTurtle falls. FrostiaK comes on the backside as well, but he doesn't have enough damage. Warchi does eventually end up falling to the spin.
2 for 1 at the end of the day. Queso was not able to save the life of Warchi, but still are able to win this team fight. PrettyPriMe and Spudio are still within the vicinity to steal away this Fire Giant, but there are no Taiko drums available.
Only 3 from OutCold to try and defend, and WorstTurtle, still one of the scariest members, is certainly comfortable. Spudio in the backline has a Vamana on top of him, and what are your options to get away from him? Knocked up as well, and Julio cleans up the kill. Now it's Dimi isolated, and WorstTurtle the best to shred through all all that extra damage. Dimi falls without any trouble, and Team Queso now are primed to take the game over OutCold, who are the perennial first-place squad, you would say, over in Europe. But right now, Queso are challenging that.
Good beats from PrettyPriMe, going to prevent the knockup, having to Thunder Crash away, but with the Oni minions barreling down the mid wave, the middle Phoenix is even going to fall. But honestly, Queso not even going to go for the mid Phoenix, they're going for the win.
They absolutely should. It's only Prime and Hayzer to defend. A two-man knockup is going to push them out, and there's too much damage coming in. WorstTurttle might fall, but who even cares? Queso, they grab the win, at least here in game one. They have absolutely showed up to play.
That was a great performance from Queso from their lackluster performance in week number 1, where they did lose to Flashpoint. Unfortunate set of circumstances, I would say, coming out of OutCold Gaming. They need to step it up for game number 2 to keep this series alive.
And if I remember correctly, this is the team that's coached by Alpha Jackal. I wonder if that's helping out a little bit, right? Between weeks 1 and 2, gives them a little bit extra help, and they come out performing like this, you could be impressed by
It's very possible. I don't know if it was necessarily the draft that allowed Queso to win it. I think it was just the passive draft coming out of OutCold Gaming, where they conceded the dual lane, they conceded the mid lane. A great performance from WorstTurttle on the Arachne, really putting pressure onto PrettyPriMe. They had no potions, had to Aegis to level 1, and I think that's what kind of set them in, losing that many red buffs consecutively.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing they got to watch for. Like you said, they got to watch for that Arachne as well. An impressive game from Queso, but let's get it back over to the desk to hear their thoughts on how they won that game.
I was asking you about the Arachne pick and why we see it here in particular for Queso, and it's because WorstTurtle wanted to carry the game. He made it look easy on this pick.
I think that WorstTurtle had a fantastic time on the Arachne and was able to accomplish exactly what they were looking for. Follow up off of a lot of those Bacchus flops straight into the crowd control from the Arachne. That temporary stun can work very efficiently in terms of setting up Warchi off of those Agni bombs. I think that all in all, Queso just worked together flawlessly to make sure that this Arachne pick could shine.
I think it's the bottom 2 picks, you highlighted it as well. Bacchus, Arachne were their bottom 2, and those 2 were the ones that ran the game by my estimation. I mean, Chekio had a bunch of player damage. Warchi definitely did his job on the Agni, but those 2 picks in particular, I don't think that we'll see Queso get those picks so late. Maybe the Arachne because it's a low priority god for most teams, but man, the Bacchus for Draco was really impressive as well.
I think what happened for OutCold here is they might have believed that the Khepri would have been enough to provide that saving grace for one member, because Bacchus, a lot of times when you see the Bacchus pick, you just think that he's meant to be single target pick focused, because the belly flop's usually ideal for targeting one carry or like one frontlining member, but I don't know, man. It just felt like there was no one from OutCold to really deal with the Bacchus, and in turn, that ended up benefiting WorstTurttle as well, because Dracomarino and WorstTurttle, they were just rolling around everywhere together because you have more than enough crowd control, you have more than enough damage and sustain that it was just, I think, almost impossible after a certain point for OutCold to try and bring either of them down.
I mean, there were some good moments for OutCold. Spudio with a really good Gold Fury steal, despite the fact that earlier in the game, Warchi walked in and stole one away from OutCold. I think Hayzer did have some really good revives. It just didn't usually end up being enough to save their lives. It was just a delay of the inevitable, it felt like, a lot of the time with that Khepri res. Dimi made a lot of really good plays, but just not quite enough. I think the one pick that I really wasn't in love with was FrostiaK's Ratatoskr. Just did not do quite enough. I mean, only 9,000 player damage in that game, just short of 10,000 to be fair, but that's still considerably lower than anybody else on his team outside of the support.
Ratatoskr can be one of those make it or break it type of picks, and I think for FrostiaK here, he did a lot of choices in decision making that involved diving deeper than what I think most people would probably prefer. I could think of one instance, for example, about midway through the game where he dives in between T1 and T2 tower, and Chekio just uses beats, turns on him, and puts him to one-shot range. And it's just those little plays where you have to factor in the risk versus reward of the situation, and for FrostiaK, he just got all of the risk and none of the rewards.